point of view, your mother watching the Olympics. I was like, there is some controversy going on today. I don't know if you've been watching the news today, but major controversy.
Welcome to the I Decide Darlings podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Lisa. We are moms, wives, best friends, entrepreneurs, and authors of the book, I Decide, the happy little guide to living your best life. Pull up a chair, grab a glass of wine, and get ready to talk all things health, success, loss, money, family, and everything in between. These two besties won't leave anything off the table.
So get ready to laugh, cry, hear the tips, tools, and stories to give you the success you crave, the life you adore, and the future you deserve. You are listening to the I Decide podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, darlings, to the I Decide Darlings podcast. We are on a roll right now, getting these things. As always, I am Erin Lopez.
And I'm Lisa Cox. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Oh my gosh. I don't know how to answer that. No.
Well, I will just say, for history's sake, and I do like to do this because one day when we look back and listen to these old podcasts, right now we are in the heat of summer.
Yeah.
I mean, the heat of summer, baby, in the Midwest and in Houston. And it's Olympics. It's the Olympics. And so we have a lot of beautiful TV to watch for the first time in a long time of hopeful, amazing athletes from all over the world gathering and competing. And it feels very magical and very special to me this time.
Okay, I have to interrupt you and say this really funny, quick story because I'm obsessed with the Olympics, and I know you know that. So my Violet today showed me I don't know if it was a TikTok or something. She was filming of me that I didn't know, and we were watching the Olympics, and I was like sitting on the floor, like lifting weights, and then and then I'd be like, yeah, and then I'd go back to lifting weights, and she was like, point of view, your mother watching the Olympics. I was like, this is kind of funny, but it's so true.
I love it.
I get teary-eyed. I get emotional.
I do too.
I don't think that they quite understand it, but I keep telling them, like, they have been working on this their whole lives, if not the past 4 years. And it comes down to like this moment. So
yeah. And sometimes it comes down to seconds. And these, I just feel like, I don't know why it just feels so hopeful for the world right now. It's like we needed this positivity to focus on, to get us unfocused on some of the other crap in the world that is so terrible out there, and the wars and all of the other stuff. And that when all these athletes come together, and I've heard they leave like best friends. Like they don't care what country the other people are from. Of course, they want to win for their country, but they leave with these friends from all over the world, the top athletes. I just think it's like a beautiful, hopeful time. And I love it. And I love it.
I agree. There is some controversy going on today. I don't know if you've been watching the news today, but major controversy. We're not going to talk about it because it could bring controversy for us.
Oh.
But you'll have to go look because two boxers, a boxer, I think she's from Italy. They were in a fight today in the boxing ring. And after about 45 seconds, she pulled out because she got punched. And she said she has never been punched that hard. And she quit because it is a male who is now a female.
Oh, okay. Oh boy.
So,
that's a whole nother podcast.
I know, but I know that's a whole nother podcast. But again, yes, we went shopping today for back to school clothes, and I was just trying on some Olympic gear just in case. I'll post pictures later just in case I ever get in the Olympics.
Well, maybe they'll have us in there for Olympic podcasting.
Yes, I am there for it.
I love it. I love it. Well, today I just have this topic that keeps sort of bubbling up in my life, Erin, that I want to talk to you about today. And I want your feedback on it. I want to share some thoughts. And I feel like we could really kind of open up this can of worms for people to really kind of take a deep dive into their life. And you and I are always talking about stuff like this, but I had a couple amazing conversations and situations lately where I really, really saw that the missing link, the missing magical link that could have solved and actually avoided the conflict that came in relationships, and different ones. Some of them were work, some of them were marriage relationships, but they could have been completely, in my eyes, avoided if they would have over communicated in the situation. So that is what I've been thinking about, is what can over communication do for your life? Because I feel like we are under communicating right now in the world and in our lives and in our relationships and at work. I think that we're almost relying way too much on either A, the words of other people, or B, what's going on social media, repost all this stuff, instead of actually communicating to our loved ones and to our work, people that we share jobs with, or our friends, in relationships with friends and family, our feelings. And I'll get more detailed, but right off the bat, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, that's a good one. I think in so many different levels, we talk about communication, we talk about expectations. And I think that over communicating is like even rewinding it back to just start with communicating, that I just think of so many, I don't want to say issues, but things that have come up in my life and in so many different aspects. And I think it comes down to communication. And I think the older we've gotten, I've learned to use my words. And what's funny is I think because we're so inundated with social media and our phones and everything, it's taking away that communication even more, because it's a hold on, I'm busy, hold on this, or, I'll send a quick text. What about a phone call? What about sitting down?
Hey there, darlings. We wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about something super exciting.
That is right, Lisa. And if you're inspired by any of our conversations, but you still feel like you're stuck in place, trapped in guilt and in self-doubt, and in the feeling that you are not enough, but you are still yearning for more time, more self-confidence, and more fulfillment in your life, this is just exactly for you.
We would like to introduce to you our transformative course, Get Unstuck in 10 Days, in which you'll gain practical steps and knowledge to break through those barriers holding you back and start living the life you truly deserve.
Absolutely, Lisa. Whether you're looking to switch it up, switch your mindset, kick those bad habits to the curb, or set meaningful goals aligned with your values, this course will open new doors just for you.
Plus, by enrolling in Get Unstuck in 10 Days, you'll not only get access to valuable lessons and resources, but also join a supportive community of like-minded individuals on a journey to personal growth and empowerment.
So what are you waiting for? Head over to our website at idecide.io and enroll in Get Unstuck in 10 Days today. Let's make those positive changes together.
And don't forget, darlings, stay tuned for more insightful conversations right here on the I Decide Darlings podcast. Thanks for listening.
I tell this story often about my parents, and again, there was no cell phones, there was no social media.
Yeah. The dark days.
The dark days. But I remember distinctly to this day, as a child growing up, my dad would get home from work every day at 6:30 on the dot, 6:30. My mom would have a cocktail. Some days it could have been a tea, I don't know. But my mom would have a cocktail ready for my dad. My dad would say hello to all of us if we were there. And then they would go sit together behind a closed door and they would talk about their day.
Are you sure that's what they were doing?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Ew,
I'm sorry.
No, just kidding.
That's terrible.
I'll tell you why. because it was a sunroom, and so we could see inside.
Okay.
I do remember, like, as a kid, like, standing at the door. And
am I in trouble for saying that?
No, I think it's funny. I mean, I mean, now looking back, I'm like, maybe I hope they were. I don't know. But I remember them doing that, where like we would stand at the door, and my mom and dad would say, So again, I say that because I think you're so correct on top of it was that communication that my parents put a boundary on, which was we need to communicate and talk to each other before we're then able to take care of our family. So
yeah,
I love it. I think that it is the secret sauce to a lot of things.
Well, I know for a fact that I expect Steve to be able to read my mind. And I learned many, many, many years ago that he can't, but I feel like
he's still trying.
And I feel like I get myself in situations because I'm like, well, honey, that's how I felt. And he's like, no, I really didn't, because you didn't tell me. And so what I've learned, and we're hitting on 35 years over here, married. And, I'm so thrilled and grateful for those 35 years, but I really have learned that I have to be overly clear on how I feel about something, or he actually won't totally understand it, because we are two different people. And that is part of the things that I think we forget. We're not just one human that, we all think the same. No, I may feel very strongly on a certain direction about something, and it could be something small. It could be about our schedule, who we're hanging out with, or whatever. And he could feel a totally different way. And so I have learned to over communicate what I feel like doing, or what I feel like, how things are going, and then asking him. And I've gotten really good at saying, how do you feel about that? Like, that's what are your thoughts on that? Because I think with a sort of I was going to say dominating personality. I'm definitely not a dominating personality, but I have a strong personality. And I definitely know what I like and what I don't like. And I'm not afraid to say it. But what is really important for me to learn for our marriage is I need to ask him, because he's so sweet, and he's got a strong personality too, but he might not say how he feels if I don't ask him to share. Yeah. And, and so for us, that has been, it literally been so helpful, is if I can actually say, okay, this is what I'm thinking about on this, like, even if it's on a trip, if we're going to go on a trip and we're going to do this and do this and do that, I was thinking we would, go this direction first. How do you feel about that? Like, what are your hopes and dreams on this trip, or whatever? And that's a really casual example, but it's important in all the most important things too in life, And so I feel like in marriage, it can be so helpful. And it's not just like him trying to read my mind, but it's also on the everyday stuff. I was telling you earlier, Erin, half the time I'll start telling him something, and then I'll get a text, and I'll be like, oh, and I'll be halfway through a sentence, and I'll be like just reading my phone, and he's like, Lisa, finish your thought, and so that's where the distractions of our social media get in the way. And so we have to learn to pause and be more communicative, so that our people around us can know what's going on, and agree on things and take care of things like that. Tell me about kids. I mean, communicating with your kids.
It has to be and I love hearing you say all this. And I think what we all have to realize too is it's a conscious choice, for you to say, what are your thoughts, and I know for me, that did not come easily to me. I had to learn how to do that. And, you and I hit the jackpot with our husbands. Let's just 100%. Say that 100%. And with that comes these learned traits that we put into play. And Tony's the one who's taught me. He's so good. And I know you know this about asking questions.
He is the best communicator.
He really is. Oh my God.
The king.
I am the introvert behind him, because he is the communicator in our relationship. And I love that. And I've also learned from him too, that, I was always kind of the more, I'm an extroverted introvert, but I was always the type that if I were to meet somebody, I was not good at asking questions, because I don't think I ever learned that. So again, I think what you're saying too, what I love, what people need to know, because I needed to know it, was it's a conscious choice to be able, to say, how do you feel about that? What do you want to do? But throw kids in the mix. And again, different seasons for everybody. But, you know, we have to over communicate just about our stinking schedule.
Oh, I can imagine.
You know, and we used to be, I mean, we're in summer right now, so it's all spaghetti on the wall. Who knows what anyone's doing? But, you know, we have to make a conscious effort during the school year to sit down together. And we have a rule. We sit down for dinner every night that we can. But to talk about our schedule for the week, because if we don't over communicate on what our schedule is, then I can't expect them to know how busy our schedule is for the week or what we're doing or whatever all this stuff is. So I think that the over communication and communication, we can put it into our marriage. We can put it into our families. We can put it into our work. I mean, how many situations have you and I been in a work situation where it's like, if you just told me everything. I always say everything's fixable, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a good trait to teach our children too.
Well, I think so too. Well, and I feel like in today's world with people hiding behind their phones and social media, I feel like it would be very easy to feel like you're alone battling something. If you're having an argument with a friend on social media, you know, and so if we don't ask our kids and really kind of get in their faces, tell me about your day. We used to do, I think you guys do this. We used to do highs and lows when we would sit down for dinner, and we made a point to have dinner at the table, unless they were competing in a sport. That night we had dinner on the table, and we would ask the kids, and they thought it was so corny, but they loved it. They, you know, they'd be like, oh, again, highs and lows, you know, it's so nerdy. And I'm like, it's nerdy, but I love to hear about your day and what the good and the bad was. And so, you know, it's almost like this thing where we in today's world have to get into their heads and make this like concerted effort where we're saying, hey, I love you, and get in their faces and say, I want to know what your high was and your low was today. I want you to share with me. And I think that is it's a lost art. I really do. I see it in other families. I think it's a lost art that the kids they won't even look up from their phones to talk to their parents as much as they used to, you know? And so
I think, you know, I think all of our kids, like, it'll be interesting to see if your girls, they'll probably implement that into their own families, you know, the highs and the lows and everything, because I think in the moment they feel like, you know, but I think as they get older, they all start to realize, like, you know, just like my parents going off and, you know, putting themselves in that room, you know, at the time I was like, oh, this is so annoying, you know, but here I am now as an adult. And I think, you know, I love that there was boundaries and they had coveted communication time just for them, because I really do like, and I love having these conversations, because I think it's just a good reminder for all of us to over communicate in our relationships, especially right now with, you know, everything going on. So I think it is really the secret sauce.
I think it is a secret sauce. And something else is in this, we're calling it over communicate. You said something that's so smart, Erin, and that is, let's just communicate. But, you know, I think of it as almost like overly communicating, but it's just opening things up for people. And part of that, and for a happy marriage and happy relationships, is being really good at being the listening side of it. Like, we have to have this communication, and communication is two ways. It's not just one way. So it's not like me spouting at Steve, constantly communicating with him, blah, 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 blah. It's also me stopping and listening to how he feels and what he does, and having patience, you know, for that, and hearing, because I was talking to a friend, and, you know, a lot of people are on an inside crisis, and we would never know because they seem just fine. You know, they always say, check on your strong friends.
Yeah.
Check on the ones that you think are just fine, because inside they could be really hurting. And so I think also the magic is in over communicating is also checking on people that you think are just fine. And, you know, I had this new thing where if someone pops in my head, I call them or I text them and I say, boy, you just popped in my head. How are you? You know, and and just a quick message, just how are you? I'm thinking about you today. I hope everything is good. You know, even that type of communication in today's crazy world where we're all so busy makes people feel really good. And typically the response is, oh my gosh, that was so nice of you to think of me. Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah. You know, this is taking me back to, you know, I'm a big proponent for all things counseling, all things therapy. I think it's just a way for us to learn how to communicate too. But this is taking me back to when, you know, Tony and I, in our early days of marriage, we had some amazing Christian counselors that we worked with. And I actually feel like I should find this and I'll post it or something, but they would give us these questions, and they were questions that like they were the same questions every week. And it was just, for an example, like, how was our communication this week? And then they encourage you once a week to sit down and say like, how do you feel like our communication was this week? And then it kind of gave you guys an opportunity to say, well, I thought it was great, but, or, you know, something like that. So I feel like, you know, I would be the type listening to this right now thinking, well, how am I going to do that? You know, and I think one answer to that is like you said in the beginning, which is asking questions and how do you feel and what do you think? And a great way is to say, you know, hey, you know what, let me have 4 or 5 questions that I can ask in my marriage that are important to me, and I bet they're important to my spouse. And then they would encourage us like every week, you know, say, you know, how do you feel like we did this week on communication? How do we feel like we did this week on spending time together? How do we, you know, and you kind of rated each other. Now, come to think of it, they were really just kind of getting you to communicate on a.
Love that.
I know. I'm literally, it's just coming to my mind now that I'm thinking, you know, and again, we always say there's seasons that, you know, there's different questions for different seasons. That
Yeah. I think so too. It's funny when you say that because this morning, this is a funny bad story on Steve and I, but this morning he always sits and does this crossword puzzle, and with the weather so beautiful, he was sitting out on the back deck. And I took my coffee and I went out to sit by him on the back deck, and I sat out there while he did that. And the news was on, but I wasn't watching it. And I was working on my phone. It's the first day, you know, of the new month. And so I was doing some work on my phone, and I sat there literally and drank my coffee for about 30 minutes. And then I got up and I said, good talk.
Good talk. It's like
just busted out laughing because we didn't say one word to each other. We just were, but you know what? That's okay too. Because we actually communicate really, really well. And at that moment, he was doing his crossword and I was doing my work, and everything is fine. But it does have to be
communication that is like, you know, you're in a good spot when you know what I'm saying? Like, that's when you can get together with like a girlfriend and you're like just sitting and staring, laugh at each other, and you're like, yeah, we're good. Like, it almost is that confidence sometimes of knowing, like, but I can just totally see you. Good talk.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to go do a podcast about this, about how communicating. And here I was, but you know what? It is something we have to all work on. It doesn't, I don't think in today's world, especially, it doesn't come naturally. No. Again, I blame social media, and I'm on it all day long, but you know, I feel like because we're on that so much that we have less words for each other in this world. And it's so important that we really work on talking to people and being caring enough to ask how they're doing and how they're feeling. And, you know, I feel like even some of our family members, I feel like, you know, I could reach out more often and just say, how is your day? You know, some people say one of the best questions you can ask, because if someone's going through a rough time in their life, or you know that they're super busy or working so hard, and one of the best questions you could ask is, how are you today? Because it's not just like, oh, how are you? Like, you know, kind of fine. No, instead it's, how are you today? And what you have going on, or something like that. And just asking about the actual present day, because then you more often will get a real response about how they are today.
True. I think you even asked me that today.
I'm trying.
You're good. Well, I love this. I feel like we should do these things more often. I mean, we love to have our guests on and interview them and hear all of these amazing tidbits and education. And I decide moments that we're coming to find and discover. But I also love it when we get to have these like darling talks, and you know, there's more to come for sure.
Me too.
So I love that you brought this up.
Erin, I think we should challenge our listeners to go out there and ask 3 people how they are today. Just go ask 3 people and see what happens.
I'm game. I'm game.
Oh
my gosh. I love it. Well, as always, darlings, we love coming here and chatting with you. And we hope that you love this today. And hopefully this over communication will be the magic sauce that you can put in your life. And we want to hear about it too. So we will be back soon here on the I Decide Darlings podcast. And who knows what we're going to talk about, right?
Who knows? What's next?
What's next? Dun, dun, dun. As always, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the I Decide Darlings podcast. If this podcast touched your heart, please share it with your friends and family right after you subscribe yourself.
Don't forget to head over to iDecideBook.com and grab a copy of our favorite book and daily journal. As always, thank you for being here, and we can't wait for you to hear our next episode.